So thank you so much. Daniel, whatever you want it. I see that, yeah. That's what we were waiting for, yeah. Do you want two?
Is that both for me?
Well, it could be if you want. What?
Dehumidifying. Well, no, you could throw it.
I can throw it at you.
I'll put it both there, otherwise
I can throw it
someone
at you.
will trip over.
I can throw it at you if you say something wrong.
Oh.
You have a lot of
If I say something, oh, it works now. If I say something wrong. No.
So, are we good to go?
I don't know, whenever you're ready. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, in Toronto, your apparently they start at 10 minutes.
Oh,
So I
okay.
can give it another couple of minutes if you want.
Right, cool.
I'm just getting frightened of what you're going to do. Look at this. Oh my God, look at this.
It's shocking.
Look at this. So after this line recognition thing, and then I have a time to introduce you.
Yeah.
No, you have to stand here and make faces at me.
I have to stand here.
But I can just call you to come. Why am I holding this?
That's just for the Q&A.
Hello. No, that's not live. Okay, it's for Q&A. Okay, I do it for later. A natural quietude. Is that a natural quietude? Is that a quietude that has a quietness that has descended? Brilliant. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Thanks for staying with us. And this is something that I have been looking forward to for a very long time. I'd like to start with acknowledging the land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat and the Seneca and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work and share and think together on this land. And it's my great pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Professor Daniel Chua. Now, Daniel is one of those people who supposedly needs no introduction. But he's also one of those people who very much deserves a very, very long introduction. So in the interest of both justice and our pre-concert dinner, which will be waiting for us, I've decided to aim for something in between. Daniel Chua is professor of music at the University of Hong Kong. Before moving there as head of humanities, he was a fellow of St. John's College, Cambridge, and later professor of music theory and analysis at King's College, London. He is the recipient of the Royal Musical Association's Dent Medal, alongside many other prestigious international honors and recognitions. He is the author of 5 books and numerous award-winning articles that have shaped the way many of us think about music, aesthetics, modernity, and culture. As president of the International Musical Society, Daniel became a major champion of global musicology and helped push the field towards a genuinely international and intellectually open conversation. It was through this work that I first came into contact with him in 2023, conversations that eventually led to the creation of the Global Western Art Music Network, of which this conference is one of the affiliated events. And I should say publicly that his enthusiasm, generosity, and positivity were absolutely fundamental in encouraging me to pursue what at times seemed a slightly stupid idea. For our first conference in Chicago, we borrowed the phrase difference in relation from Daniel's now legendary Keynote without a key, and it became something of a guiding idea for us. It also, I suspect, thoroughly confused most of the grant agencies to which we applied. So we were turned down by many of them. In Chicago, we deliberately used the phrase global Western art music as a provocation, because every single word in that phrase is problematic. Global Western art and music rather than sound. And certainly their combination is even more problematic. But I think today, Daniel's keynote may actually outdo our original provocation, because as I understand it, he intends to question and shake up the very conceptual foundations of this entire conference. So Daniel, thank you very much for having traveled so long to come to personally inform us that we have got it all wrong. But if anyone is going to tell us we've got it all wrong, I'm glad it's Daniel. Because those of you who know Daniel's work and lectures will know that they are always extraordinarily thought-provoking and intellectually daring, while also being deeply humane, witty, and genuinely entertaining. And if you had seen the slides that I'm seeing here, you would have known how much fun we're going to have in a moment. And in his hands, music and joy somehow go hand in hand, all the time are inseparable. And that's the title of his latest book as well. And so, if our assumptions are indeed about to be dismantled, I can't imagine a better guide for the task. So please join me in welcoming Professor Daniel Chua.
Thank you very, very much. Before I give my talk, I feel I really need to make this time about Michelle and also Robin, because they've put so much work into this conference. You have not seen how much work they've put in, and really, I mean, literally from writing program notes to arranging, chicken for lunch or whatever it is. It's really a lot, and of course, organizing conferences is a big deal. So I want us all to thank them from the bottom of my heart with the loudest applause possible. Where's Robin? Yeah, he's over there. Really, thank you so much, because it's been so amazing, and everything's been so joyful and smooth for me, but I know there's a lot of sacrifice involved in order for that to happen, so thank you very much. Just the applaud is not enough. You should go and talk to them and thank them personally, and also take them out for lunch and dinner. Okay, so make sure you do all that. And thank you very much, Michelle, for that very flattering introduction, which I hope to live up to. I probably won't be able to live up to that today, but so let's see what happens. It's really a great joy for me to be here. It's a delight, so delightful. I actually got a happy emoji here to show how happy I am to be here. I'm very glad to be here partly because for the last few years I've been feeling really bad, because Michelle keeps asking me, non-stop asking me to come to her events and give a talk at her events. And every time I've had to say no, because it doesn't quite fit my schedule. And Michelle is always so nice and so persuasive. Every time I said no, I felt really, really bad. So this time, Michelle and also Robin had a sneaky plan, and they actually organized this conference around my schedule. So this schedule is really convenient for me, but probably really inconvenient for the rest of you. So I'm really sorry about that, especially for those of you online who would probably all be here had I not inconvenienced you. So anyway, finally, I have made it, and I'm here, and I'm so glad to be here, and it's great joy. Except that I still feel really bad. And the reason why I feel really bad, Michelle, is because you should be very careful what you ask for when dealing with me. And it's usually a very bad idea to ask Daniel Chua to give a keynote. In fact, I actually come with a Canadian government health warning, which you've probably seen at the airport. And the reason why I come with a warning is because as an academic, and I'm going to speak French now because, it's Canada and it's a bilingual place. So the reason why I come with a health warning is because as an academic, I am an agent provocateur and an enfant terrible. And it's because I'm a provocateur that I'm a terrible. And I've been an enfant terrible, ever since I was an academic enfant. My PhD was so terrible that my supervisor actually disowned me and my PhD. It's true. I was that terrible. And I'm continuing to be enfant terrible in my old age. So in a recent book called Alien Listening, I basically insulted every music theorist on the planet. I wrote, music theory does not know what music is. And then to add insult to injury, I said, music theory fails as theory. Ouch. The funny thing is, the Society for Music Theory actually gave me an award for insulting them. So this has only encouraged me to insult all of you in the room today. So be warned, okay? I'm going to be shocking. I mean, really shocking, like that. And in fact, might be so shocking that you might want to change your papers after my talk. That's shocking, okay? But please do not do that. Do not change your paper on account of me, because as I said, I am a provocateur, and provocateurs are incapable of giving keynote addresses because we can never find the key. We give off-note addresses, atonal addresses, dissonant note addresses, and you do not have to resolve my dissonances, okay? So just relax and chill. So especially, I know, Michelle, Robin, you're very worried that I'm about to blow up the whole theme of the conference, but just relax is okay, and look, suitably shocked at the appropriate moment, and I'll be happy. So don't worry about it. All right. Now, in my defense, I think the organizers of the conference put me up to this, because the title of the conference that they gave me was Interrogating Global Musical Modernities and Local Agencies. So today I'm just going to follow orders, and I'm going to interrogate global musical modernities and local agencies by looking at these three words: global, modernities, and local. So, are you ready to be shocked? Shall we begin? Okay. Here we go. So global, local, modernity or modernities. Now, these are very big words, big issues, right? They mean big things. They do a lot of heavy lifting. If I were to try to define any of these three words, it'll take me at least an hour for each one. Heavy work. But they're also really glib words and really lightweight words, because these words are overused, words that would appear in every conference title on global musicology, probably in every paper on global musicology. And we use them like magic spells, abracadabra, and voila, global musicology. So these words are now so ubiquitous that they have become invisible structures, like blind spots in our thinking. So why do we use these terms? How are these three terms related? What is the logic of their triangulation? So let's begin with the word global, since we're at a global musicology event. Now, the global implies the local as its opposite. The pair operates in the same way that centers have margins and mainlands have borders. The global and the local belong to the same binary vocabulary where opposites create a movement, an agency, if you like, that makes modernity. And modernity, or modernities, is always on the move, this circulation that connects the binary oppositions in the dynamic process of border crossings and interactions across divides. So modernity needs the borders between the global and the local to define itself. So borders and margins become critical agential sites. They mark lines of difference and confluence, resistance, or acquiescence. These local agencies inform the modern process of the global. So in this triangulation, each term cannot exist without the other. They are inextricably linked as a self-regulatory framework for global musicology. And this is a powerful framework, and it has generated many insights into how music operates globally. However, because these words have become so common, the framework is in danger of becoming a fixture, literally an inflexible way of thinking in which the relation between the global, local, and the modern are determined by rigid boundaries. And global musicology may be showing signs of rigor mortis. Now, for this system to function properly, the content needs to be fluid. where what constitutes the center and margin, or the global and local in the formation of modernity, is itself dynamic, flowing in unexpected directions and swapping identities and functions. The framework needs to accommodate different patterns, different modernities, but also different localities, different globalities, to prevent it from ossifying into a one-size-fits-all template. Now, instead of me discussing this fluidity in an abstract way, let me just apply this to my part of the world as an illustration of how this interior dynamic might work well. So let's head over to China and explore its modernities. Now, I'm not a historian of modern China, and the Chinese modernity is a very complex thing. So all I'm going to do here is to give you 3 simple snapshots to indicate the complexity that I'm dealing with. Now, the first thing you need to know about China is its name. Its name in Chinese is 中国. And 中国means middle kingdom. Now, there is no middle without boundaries, just as there is no global center without local peripheries. And China's modernity is premised on its middle name, especially in relation to the West. And so today I want to point out 3 moments of modernity in China, each one with its own distinct choreography to illustrate the different patterns that this middle can take in this triangulation of the global, local, and the modern. And the first snapshot is now. So we don't really need to talk about it very much because we're living in it now. And this is the geopolitics of China's modernity. In this scenario, China's modernization is seen as a threat that might outstrip the Western modernity. Modernization is no longer a joint venture between China and the West, but a disjointed adventure for military, economic, cultural, and technological hegemony and global influence. With China defined as a one-party nation-state, modernity here is a zero-sum relation, and we might visualize it as contrasting blocks in opposition. So what gets squeezed between these blocks are the borders. These are the local flashpoints of contestation. So for example, from China's perspective, what's happened here? From China's perspective, Japan is a proxy for the West right now, and the recent stance by its prime minister on Taiwan has brought these 2 blocks into friction. Local agencies become global flashpoints when they cross the border. They get trapped like grist in the friction. So, for example, the Japanese singer Maki Otsuki gave a concert in Shanghai when this geopolitical conflict first erupted, and her concert was suddenly shut down in mid-song. A local agency operating in a global circuit, her identity was crushed by a clash of modernities in a zero-sum game of global politics. Or, as another example, just take Hong Kong, where I come from. Hong Kong is also caught up in this friction between geopolitical blocs. From the perspective of the West, Hong Kong is a remnant of its former glory, a pocket of Western modernity losing its resistance. For China, however, what is a shrinking outpost for the West is huge. It is part of the biggest urban development project in the world, a Greater Bay Area destined to be the pinnacle and center of China's modernization. Musically, the West would prefer to hear the songs of local fishermen wafting across the Pearl River Delta as the swan song of a borderland silted up with the muck of China's urban growth. Hong Kong's authenticity is no longer in its modernity because it is no longer central for the West. It has moved politically backwards. It is unmodern. But for China, this glistening mega metropolis needs to compete with Western culture, and so will soon stage, and in fact it has staged its own Verbier festival and will stage its own ring cycles as marks of its modernity. Hong Kong, as part of the Greater Bay Area, is strategically in the middle of the Middle Kingdom's new civilization. It is at the forefront of China's modernity. So in this scenario, where is the border? Who is mainland? What is local? What is global? What is modernity? The next snapshot is 1945. China is now in a unique position. It has finally won a war after 100 years of humiliating defeats. But it is not just any war. They've just won the Second World War, along with, of course, with their allies. And China is, in fact, the only sovereign nation in China to win that war. And America and Britain are expecting China to play a major role in their version of global modernity, a Western modernity. Hence, China is given a place on the Security Council of the UN, and Japan was supposed to be relegated to the margins. But exactly the opposite happened. Japan becomes the sovereign nation in Asia aligned with Western modernity, and civil war in China realigns China with the Soviet Union, which created a double wall for the West, an iron curtain and a bamboo curtain. And the mainland becomes the borderland for the West. It becomes local and parochial from the perspective of the West. And China's borders, Hong Kong and Taiwan, become the main players in Western modernity. The peripheral outlying islands, those colonial hybrids, represented Chinese modernity as far as the West was concerned. In fact, Taiwan was China for much of the time. So the peripheral became the mainland, and the mainland lost its middle. Hence, after Mao's regime, President Nixon would send Eugene Ormandy and the Philadelphia Orchestra to Beijing in 1973 to help China find its middle again. Western culture, as a modern product, is offered as a gift of cultural diplomacy to signal the possibility of China's return to the global order and to the modern world. But of course, if you were in the mainland under Mao, the task was still modernization. But Soviet style was a different modernity, a state modernity, as central to China as the newly formed Central Conservatory was in modernizing music. The adoption of Western notation, the advancements in musical practices and technologies were strategic moves to modernize music. From the West, it would look provincial, but from within, China was still central. It was still Zhongguo. So in this shape-shifting scenario, where is the border? Who is mainland? What is global? What is local? What is modernity? We can visualize it a bit like this, like a Mobius strip. China, in this snapshot, is a divided and distributed entity. Its modernity is like a Mobius strip. What is inside and outside twists and turn on the same strip. What is central and peripheral in relation to modernity loop in and out of each other. And finally, my third snapshot is from the 17th and early 18th century, a period when Jesuits from the West went east to China, except that there was no West, really, at that time. It was only in the process of moving east that the West was defined by China. As Emmanuel Levinas might say, it is always the other that defines the identity of the self. And the European self was formulated in its engagement with China, including its music. As David Irving points out, the term European music was first formulated by Jesuits in relation to China. The Jesuits did not describe their music as Italian music or Spanish music or French music, but a giant block of music called European music. Apparently, size really matters. European music represents the Middle Kingdom of the West, as impressive as the Middle Kingdom of the East. So China, in this sense, made European music. And not only did China name Europe, it was also the catalyst for European modernity in the form of the Enlightenment, no less. For thinkers such as Leibniz and Voltaire, China was a model for modernity at the time. China was not so much at that time a nation-state or even an ethnic state, but an entity defined by a system of government that had been in place for centuries, the Confucian system. Here then was the model of a meritocracy without a personal divisive God as an ordering principle that might cause 30 years of war among protesting confessions. So for the Europeans, Confucius was the patron saint of their enlightenment. And what is the key concept for order in the Confucian system of governance? It's harmony, he. So the European Enlightenment was playing China's tune. But the Jesuits, in bringing Western Christianity into China, also introduced a modernizing force, which much later, from the 1840s, shaped China as a nation state. The Christianizing force was also a musical one. As Andrew Jones points out, with the opening of the treaty ports, the Christian hymnal entered China through Western missionaries and was adopted as the musical vehicle for both nationalists and communists to create solidarity and galvanize its people into political action. The sonic passage of modern China was the Protestant hymn. So in this scenario, China secularized the West, and the West Christianized China in the making of both modernities. And each side determined each other's music in that process of modernization. So where is the border? Who is mainland? What is modernity here? In this snapshot, we can visualize modernity as a yin-yang symbol, a contrasting but complementary, symmetrical, interdependent, fuzzy relation between China and the West. So I have given you 3 snapshots with 3 different images, contrasting blocks, a Mobius strip, and a yin-yang symbol. These different shapes of modernity and their relation to the local and the global point to multiple definitions of modernity and different definitions of China and its borders. China's modernity is a very complex, adaptive, non-linear system. Now, this complexity is not exclusive to China. You can apply these patterns to many more different places in the world. Now, just in case you're wondering, or you're feeling a little bit smug, I have not said anything shocking yet, okay? I'm just trying to be very helpful here by giving you some, nice, constructive illustrations. Now, global musicology is designed to map these complex interactions. In fact, if modernity is defined by mobility, then global musicology is a means of mapping modernity in terms of its flows and entanglements across borders. Global musicology, in this sense, is a purpose-built vehicle to explore global musical modernities and local agencies. Now, here is the first shocking statement today. Are you ready? Global musicology is on the verge of a massive fail because it is fixated on 2 things. 1, borders, the very premise behind the global and the local. And 2, modernity. Shocking. Why so? Let's begin with borders. Now, most people think that global musicology is about the music. Music is global. Yes, music is global. It crosses borders. But this has been the case for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, if you include non-human music, but that is a shock for another day. So the question is, why global musicology now? Why should this movement emerge at this time? Why is it important and significant today? Now, musicology needs to be global now, because I should just mention that when I use the term musicology, I'm using it in the most generic sense possible, just the study of music. So it includes historical musicology, music theory, ethnomusicology, and all that stuff. Okay. So musicology needs to be global now because musicologists are global. Okay? Musicologists are global. The reason for global musicology is less about the music than about the people. It is not so much thematic as demographic. Today, musicologists are everywhere and are always on the move. If you need proof of that, just look around you and say hi to your neighbor. We are all, in this room, a definition of global musicology in the making. Global musicology, then, is not a particular theme, but a universal condition in which musicologists located in different parts of the world have a unique perspective on the globe. It is a paradigm shift akin to Einstein's scientific revolution. Global musicology is a theory of general relativity. The space-time of musicology has become relative, depending on our position on the planet. There is no absolute position from which to fix centers, and margins, and there is no central perspective or local position to claim. Instead, the same musical object is known differently depending on where you are. Musicological space-time is warped. So, if musicological space-time is relative, where do you draw the borders? Where do you fix them? Or rather, are there any borders? Are borders even possible? Or maybe everything is border, in which case, isn't everything just borderless? A global musicology defined by borders is strangely not global. Shocking. So that's borders. What about the other problem? Modernity. Modernity is a problem for global musicology because musicology is modern. Musicology is not a theory of relativity, it is a theory of modernity. Its Midas touch turns everything into modernity. As such, musicology cannot truly be global because it was never designed for a global community. Rather, it was designed to break it up with borders. Modernity undermines global musicology because it operates as the border control of musicological space-time. And it does this in two ways. The first way we have already discussed. Because modernity is about global mobility, it needs borders to cross. So the first type of border is geographic. Musicology is a map, a cartographical epistemology that generates cross-border agency. The second type of border is temporal. Modernity is defined by a fundamental temporal divide. Modern societies need to divide itself from that which is not modern. The pre-modern world from which the modern world is generated is either historically locked as a past that has been overcome in the present, or is a past that is located elsewhere in the present in a place that is yet to modernize, primitive places as opposed to modern places. Either way, time is progress needs a border to divide itself from time as stasis. What moves forward is defined against what remains backwards, what is new against what never changes. Modernity is premised on a teleological agency. It is about historical progress. Now, if musicology is the theory of modernity, then when we ask questions about modernity, we are confronting our own tacit epistemological foundation. We're looking into the mirror at our own ideological blind spot. And in this gaze, either we see nothing and perpetuate the blindness, or it becomes an eye-opening critique. So, how is musicology modern? Well, take the simple term musicology as a symptom of the underlying problem. Musicology literally means the study of music, in the same way that theology means the study of God. And for most people in the world, that makes perfect sense, right? All of us in this room should be able to own the term musicology. But in our discipline, it has a much narrower sense. Musicology is not a general term, but a specific one, meaning Western music history, which also goes by historical musicology, where the idea of the West is so nonchalantly assumed that it can be left unsaid. When musicology is prefaced by the term global, the whole concept should collapse. The adjective not only unravels the geographic assumption, the West, but also its disciplinary assertion, history. It challenges the ideological foundations of music studies that have divvied up the globe in the crudest disciplinary terms. The West had music history, i.e. progress, and music theory, i.e. a canon that documents the progress, and the rest was given an ethnography and a natural soundscape. The West takes musicology as its general term, and what's left needs the dubious prefix ethno to qualify it. One has a historical record because it is literate, you have notation, whereas the other requires sound recording to render its ephemeral yet static nature readable. These binaries match the standard modern, pre-modern divide used to define modern societies from their other. And despite numerous attempts to obviate the biases within our discipline, we have not been able to overcome the divide because this is ingrained in our institutional structures. Now, here is my next shocking statement before dinner. What if we have never been modern? Now, this is not my idea, but an idea published in 1991 by Bruno Latour in a book called We Have Never Been Modern. The modern, pre-modern identity that defines us moderns, Latour explains, is merely a claim, a theoretical constitution that does not actually constitute our hybrid practices in our daily lives. And anthropological analysis would easily verify that we moderns do not live by the dualism we espouse, and like any other pre-modern society, mix up what we have separated: the human and non-human, culture and nature, subject and object, reason and religion, history and ethnography, and so on and so forth. There has never been a modern world, declares Latour. The globe is all pre-modern, or rather non-modern, or a-modern. And this goes for the modern invention of musicology too. Musicology was born modern. It came into being in the late 19th century at the height of European exceptionalism, essentialism, and expansion. The study of music was born divided, segregated at its very foundation, and certified by Guido Adler's founding constitution, the scope, method, and aim of musicology of 1885. And here is a table, a summary table from Adler's article. Then there's no need to read the content. Just the optics of this tabular form will do to illustrate the segregation of musicology into specialized divisions. If you're interested, ethnomusicology is here under D, right at the end. This historical musicology, ethnomusicology divide is our birthmark. Western music history, in its pursuit of narratives of progress and emancipation, has discarded most music in the world to focus only on one half of the binary oppositions that define modernity: the human, not non-human; culture, not nature; subject, not object; reason, not religion, and so on. Ethnomusicology comes in its wake to mop up what's left in the other half, to reinforce the binary opposition. Modernity divides. But if we have never been modern, then we should mix things up a bit. There is no division in real life. So the challenge is how to conceive of an epistemology of music that is a-modern, an undivided, blurry, borderless musicology that allows us to mix things up a bit. After all, what's the point of trumpeting a global theme if our epistemology remains Western? So how do you do an a-modern musicology? Now, if you recall, modernity divides musicology in two fundamental ways: spatially as a map, and temporally as historical progress. So to decouple global musicology from modernity, we need to perform two tasks. One, we need to throw away the map. And two, we have to stop historical progress. Simple, right? Now, to help me achieve this task, I'm going to try an epistemological experiment. I would like to balance the cartographical, teleological, divisive, and instrumental methods of so much Western thought with an approach from my part of the world, from China, and explore a different way, quite literally. The Tao, the way. What would the Tao of global musicology look like? What if we adopt the Tao Te Ching as an epistemological foundation? So, our first task is to throw away the map. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu describes the Tao, the way, as, and I quote, a great square with no corners. Here it is, great square, Da Fang. No corners, Wu Yu. With such a square, There is no end in sight, since its corners are off limits. It disorientates the square. So the first lesson in finding the way is, in fact, to get lost. If global musicology were to follow the Tao, it too should be a great square with no corners and lose itself in the process. Now, at this point, I need a volunteer from the audience. Is there anybody who'd like to volunteer? Come on, guys. Sherry. Thank you. Come. We have a volunteer. Yes, this is good. Please encourage, yes. Brilliant. Yes. Yeah, this is not going to hurt, don't worry. Yeah. You do have to sign this waiver. Okay, all right, okay.
You did say...
It won't hurt.
You did mention a health warning.
There is a health warning. Okay. Would you like to sign the waiver?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. This is very simple, okay?
Yeah.
Just imagine this is a square, not a rectangle.
Yeah.
Can you see the corners? Can you see the corners?
I imagine I can see the corners.
You can see the corners?
I think I can see the corners.
Good, okay.
Yeah. Oh,
Can you see the corners now?
Only with great difficulty.
You can?
Well, maybe my peripheral vision is
Just a peripheral?
But as a matter of fact, the corners have become, a real challenge.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big hand of applause. Okay. You're great. No, you were terrific. A square with no corners is one where we are in the square. We're in the square, unable to gather the four corners of the Earth or coordinate its ends with a satellite view of the planet. This is the condition of musicologists connected across the planet today. When we are in the square, we inhabit a kind of circle which we cannot square because we're too close to see it all. It's a little bit like this, a square, and that's the circle. We cannot see the corners. So a 360 degrees vision won't get us to the corners. And this should be our default position. But so much of our global thinking tries to make the circular square. We flatten the sphere, square the circle, give it corners, and we make a map like this. Cartography is modernity's global epistemology. Modern humans imagine a square globe in order to master it and plot its movements. Knowledge is stored as a form of cartography in order for us to analyze, strategize, and define the data. A square with the four corners of the world in view is the shape of an instrumentalized, colonized, and rationalized globe. Now, if our epistemology remains a square with corners, then our approach will likely undermine rather than underpin a global vision of musicology. Now, obviously, the globe is a sphere. It can have no corners by definition. And global musicology, therefore, presupposes an epistemological sphere by default. However, in practice, any form of data storage involves the conversion of time into space for analysis, whether it is in the form of a score, in a recording, on a page, or simply in your brain. And such forms of knowledge cannot remain spherical. Some kind of squaring actually is necessary to store that data. What Lao Tzu reminds us in the Tao Te Ching, then, is that in order to find the way to global knowledge, we must stay spherical within the square, like this, with the corners of the world always receding into infinity as they bend out of sight. We can't know it all. So Lao Tzu's advice is, don't be square, or at least don't be a square without a spherical outlook. Stop grabbing hold of those corners and let go of what we know. Otherwise, global musicology will be trapped in the map as its tacit epistemological coordinates. And there will be no escape from centers and margins, from victors and victims, positions we fixed and labeled and ultimately locked under a grid. It would look a little bit like the two blocks that I flashed up earlier. This map mentality is currently the precondition for China's geopolitical situation, a narrative where Western imperialism in the 19th century humiliated China and turned a great civilization into a victim. And now the victim seeks revenge. China is positioned to take the upper hand. In terms of the modernity of Western art music, this hand will look like the upper hand of Lang Lang. And every time he hits a note on the piano, it is as if the empire strikes back. This is the underlying meaning of Lang Lang in the opening ceremony of the Beijing Olympics in 2008, if you can remember. China is showcasing the narrative of its rise, a grand narrative of a 5,000-year civilization emerging from its historical humiliation to become a global power of economic, technological, and cultural dominance. Western modernity, including its music in Lang Lang's hand, is now China's to own. So Lang Lang is the local agency of global power, the upper hand of China's soft power. Now, if global musicology falls into the wrong hands, it will accomplish what maps are truly useful for, which is war. In this scenario, global musicology will be degraded to a series of identities, replaying power games of margins and centers. It would look like flags on a battle plan, tiny cardboard entities interacting in a zero-sum play of self-canceling moves to see whose identity is left standing as the atomized other. Such an approach is always in danger of cultural wars based on border tensions and the centralization of progress. And such oppositional narratives are easy to grasp because complex situations are essentialized into two simple blocks. And these are precisely the illusory corners of modern thought that the Tao Te Ching says we need to let go of. So, what does a square with no corners actually look like? If global musicology is already present because musicologists are already everywhere, then no mapping is necessary because we are all inhabitants of the globe. As musicologists across the globe, we determine the global content by being where we are. Global musicology emerges from the relationship between situated particulars in an infinitely complex system. A square with no corners is akin to what Timothy Morton calls a hyper-object. A hyper-object is an entity so big that it is beyond our reach and can be known only in part as something that emerges across time and space through endless transformative interactions on the ground. It is like a swirling weather system. After all, on the surface of the globe, there is no center or margin to organize the world. We're all inhabitants in different positions, each one with a unique coordinate, with diverse perspectives, all swirling at different rates across the planet. So as inhabitants on the ground generating the hyper-object, we are not map readers, but what the anthropologist Tim Ingold calls wayfarers, which is why the first thing to know about the way is to get lost. We need to be like Lao Tzu, the wandering sage. Wayfaring, or more aptly Tao-faring, demands a productive agnosticism about where we are and where we are going. Or in the words of the Tao Te Ching, a good wanderer leaves no trace. A good wanderer leaves no trace. Whereas mapping traces the globe to acquire foreign knowledge, the good wanderer encounters the other without leaving a mark. The other remains other, as if nothing has happened, unviolated, unpossessed, unhindered, unspoiled. But of course, everything has happened. Alien encounters change everything. The question here is how we relate to alterity. How can everything change in an encounter without leaving a mark? To not leave a trace, yet radically change the relation sounds hard to do. Yet I suspect that it happens all the time, everywhere. It's not hard to do, it's just hard to see, especially through the lens of modernity. You see, in the Tao Te Ching, what is foreign is truly known in absence. The transformation it seeks is transparent. To have no corners is to leave the ungraspable unknown, which is why any encounter with the non-identical requires what the Tao Te Ching calls non-action, or wu wei, non-action. Now, in contrast, the opposite of absence is essence, or ousia in Greek. And as Bung Chul Han points out, ousia derives from the word for property. And so, by definition, It leaves a mark by staking its ground, taking a stand, and determining itself within its territory. It is about agency. It is about action and instrumentalized rationality, mapping borders to make the other present. Since Occidental thought is grounded in essence, power and possession tend to be its measure of success and the content of its narratives. It puts a flag on what is foreign. Flagging difference is the mindset of the West, whereas following indifference is the ethos of the way. It is a space where everyone is simultaneously foreign to each other and native within their own vicinity, leaving nothing to flag. Each position is both central locally and parochial when viewed from elsewhere. Agency is neither unidirectional or bidirectional, but blandly multidirectional. In contrast, the default setting of modern musicology is all about difference. Europe, for example, is different. For some bizarre reason, Europe has a monopoly on what I call the three evil E's: exceptionalism, essentialism, and expansionism. Together, they make up the mother of all E's, Eurocentrism, the marker of global difference. But Europe does not have a monopoly on exceptionalism, essentialism, or expansionism. China has its own sinocentrism, which is equally single-minded in its pursuit of the three evil E's. In fact, everyone across the globe is equally susceptible to them. Western imperialism is not the only narrative. Asia, for example, has its own forms of imperialism. Arguably, China's own perspective on its modern narrative is shaped less by Western imperialism than Japanese imperialism after the Meiji Restoration from about 1868 onwards, as the current geopolitical crisis underlines. If Eurocentrism is just one of many centrisms, then the global landscape is not one of difference, but indifference. Or take, for example, the 17th and 18th century example that I mentioned earlier. Modernity between Europe and China is not an opposition, that is, a difference, but a complementary movement, an indifference. Confucianism instigates the European Enlightenment, and Christianity stimulates China's modernization as a nation-state. Both sides, East and West, define each other. It is not that one side is modern and the other is pre-modern. Both are modern, as yin is to yang, which is to say that neither are modern. Perhaps these are just amodern processes, relations, and interactions balanced to the point of indifference. Equilibrium, from this perspective, cannot be mapped because it is essentially blank. And it is precisely this bland indeterminacy that invites us to wonder. And if you are a wanderer, you don't need a map. So this is how you throw away the map. So this is task number one accomplished. Now, task number two, stop historical progress. Now, you should have figured out by now that global musicology is not about doing, it's not about agency, it's about being. It is an epistemology that requires non-action as its initial move. So the question is, if there's no action, what then is global musicology? Well, I suggest it is first an awareness, a recognition, a listening, a relation, a value, a commitment, a posture of the mind. Unfortunately, this is not how academia works. We are all modern in academia. We are all about doing and not about being. We are ordered to make a difference and to leave a trace. Our task is to make history and to make progress, and we need to push research forward in order to demarcate the border that keeps us on the right side of modernity. As modern agents, we get our hands on the essence of things in an act of epistemological and material conquest, then bend them to our will. And now that global musicology is trending as the next big thing, we need to acquire the globe to be relevant. At times, global musicology feels like it's on overdrive. The globe needs multitasking, its complex relations need hyper-attention, and its worldwide operations demand overachievers. And as much as I admire the pyrotechnics of so many globally themed dissertations and publications, we need to step away from the representation of the global as a figure and return to the ground. In other words, global musicology is not something we need to achieve. You don't have to acquire another landmass in your research profile to be relevant. That is a huge burden on any graduate student, no? Bye-bye. So global musicology is about being where you are and belonging to something you were already a part of, a being in relation. The whole point of the global enterprise is to redistribute worth according to the laws of general relativity. Having no center or margins means that everyone across the globe is differently yet equally and already relevant, whether you're in Bogota, Boston, Beijing, or Brussels. We don't need to make historical progress in global musicology. Just stay still. Look around. Otherwise, our frenetic labor will prevent us from realizing that global musicology has already been occurring in miraculous ways in places we hardly know on the planet. What you do already counts as long as there's a willingness to participate from your location on the globe in the cloud of unknowing that is the hyper-object. And if that sounds too nebulous and mystical for you, just think of this cloud as a heap. When is a heap a heap? Who knows? But at some point, a growing clump of particles interacting with each other will be a tipping point, and the particles become part of something bigger that will change their definition. Did the particle change itself? Did it do anything different? Is one particle necessarily more important than another? No, yet something big happened. So some seemingly insignificant scholar working in some obscure corner of the globe on some local aspect of music is just as relevant, if not more global, than some fancy academic at the center of the musicological map with all the resources at hand to master a musicology of multiple regions. Virtuosity is not a virtue in global musicology. Particles need only connect, and who knows which one will be the tipping point that makes the critical mass critical. So this is why it's best to think of global musicology as an ecology that embraces all aspects of musicology as an intricate and interconnected whole, where the focus is not on the faces of prominent academics, but the interfaces between academics. A certain Daniel K.L. Chua pontificating on global musicology in this regard is not significant or progressive. He's just loud and dangerous. It is the in-betweenness of things that is the critical mass for global musicology. In the spaces inhabited by scholars who listen to alterity, who lower the cost of entry, who connect distant people, who entertain strangers, who care for their locality, and who build bridges. People like Michelle and Robin, really important people, right? But they don't have to, you're quite, shout around like me, right? No, no need to do that. And these people are actually often unseen because there is no need to flag your existence if you are already embedded in an ecology. You vanish as part of everything that surrounds you. When global musicologists finally inhabit a global epistemology, our discipline will be transparent. It will leave no trace. The challenge for global musicology now is to foster an a-modern environment for that epistemology to emerge. And this will take time, not progress. It will take people, not identities. It will be a slow musicology that bypasses the speed of modernity by having no trends, no up-to-date methods, no cutting-edge standards, no virtue signaling, and no critical themes, all of which are generated by powerful modern centers bent on upholding modernity's divides in the name of progress. So here is another shocking statement before dinner. If you want to achieve the goal of this conference, do nothing. Follow the advice of the Tao Te Ching and actively take no action. Being here is actually enough. Whoever lays hold of the kingdom, says the Tao Te Ching, will lose it. If we try to get our hands on the subject of the conference, if we grab those corners, we will lose the way. Instead, if you want to find the Tao, if you want to find the way, you need to throw away the map, abandon your agency, let go, and get lost. Now, are you too shocked for me to continue? Do you still have, can take more of me? Is it okay? Yeah, it's okay? You sure? All right. So for the next hour, some concluding thoughts. All right. So where does this leave modernity, the global, and the local? A globality without modernity does not mean that modernity does not exist. It doesn't mean that the theme of this conference, the triangulation of the modern, the local, and the global, is spurious. Modernity remains, but it is no longer synonymous with the global. Modernity does not make the global, and the global does not need to be modern. In other words, modernity no longer dominates as a regulatory principle. It is merely one particular epistemology thrown into the mix as part of a theory of relativity. Its universal claims are suspended in quotation marks and unmasked as a construct that no longer controls our borders and defines our localities. And this is not a matter of neutralizing modernity. It is still very real in that it has conditioned how we operate, including our own discipline. The constructs has bent our discourses, fashioned our perception of the world, and formed our identities. There is nothing neutral about it. But our lived reality is not modernity. We have never been modern. Rather, there is a gap between the reality we live and the belief systems that we live by. A gap between the real, let's call that the amodern, and the ideal, the modern. So think of modernity as an ideal up there, positioned as a satellite that oversees the globe. It orbits over us as a cartographical ideology. Musicology, in its current form, also belongs up there as a modern construct that divides and maps the world. In contrast, the amodern world is the lived reality on the ground that does not align with the divisive constructs up there. Similarly, a global musicology defined by inhabitants on the ground is amodern. It belongs down here. It is an emergent musicology of mixtures where the divisions are broken up into complex, indifferent interactions. The challenge for global musicology is to negotiate the slippage between the real and the ideal in order to keep our discipline grounded. It requires an everyday epistemology based on our lived reality down here, something akin, I suggest, to following the Tao. In this mundane, indifferent, emergent mixture, there is no need to take sides as if our discipline is still determined by the abstract divisions up there. We are neither all ethnomusicologists now, as Nick Cook says, nor are we all musicologists now, as Stephen Amico says, because these are ideological constructs that form two sides of the same coin called modernity. Rather, by keeping things down to earth, we are all global musicologists now, because whether you realize it or not, we really are. Thank you. Sorry. Yes, you can start. Don't come too close. I'm very dangerous.
Yes? Hello? Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Well, okay, so Saturday roundtable, we just go to a pub, have some drinks. There's no roundtable anymore because
Just hang out, do nothing. Yeah, just enjoy.
Just stand, take the shape of the bars and do nothing. Thank you so much for that, Daniel. That was absolutely amazing. And yes, you are a dangerous, non-musicologist, non-modern. Well, I'm going to suggest that we do about 10-15 minutes of discussions so that we can, and then probably we'll start having the the food at 1:15 instead of at 6 o'clock, because I like to allow this. And I need to go and give a hand a little bit as well, because I do things.
I know.
Any comments, any questions? Oh, Kobe.
Oh,
Hatch? Come to the front. Or is that going to take a long time? No, not on the chair. Sophia is going to help us.
Well, thank you, Daniel, for this really thought-provoking talk. Although I have to say, I wasn't shocked so much.
Okay,
the
never
things
mind.
you were saying.
You're a genius.
I'm sorry to push back a little bit on that, but maybe it's also because I'm not a musicologist, and I'm a performing musician. We had a brief talk yesterday also about artistic research, the way I do it through music. But nonetheless, these are the kind of the things that I would like to hear much more, coming also from musicology, these kind of ideas. And it actually also reminded me of, well, the one musicological theory that really informed my research was by Georgina Bourne, who writes about relational musicology. And I wanted to ask, how do you see what you're suggesting here? It seems to me very similar to Bourne's approach.
Yeah, I think Bourne and also Nick Cook, I think there's a lot of talk now about relationships, I think. I think one of the key things, I don't know, I mean, I talk about, not in today's lecture, but I talk about a difference in relation. And so the question always to me is how that relationship works, right? In other words, how do you, I mean, in this talk, I talk about how do you actually encounter difference without making a mark, right? Or previously, how do you talk about difference in relation? So I think we're all trying, in one sense, to define what that relationship might be. I think it's actually much more, I mean, we make it sound so simple. But my opening premise, which I think is a bit different, is that because we're all basically global now as musicologists, we just need to change our discipline structurally and epistemologically, because actually it was formed at the wrong time. So it has a different epistemology from how we just are demographically now. So if we take that very seriously, then we really need to change, including the way we divide, the way we divide up the way our faculties are and our forms of knowledge are and so on, and then begin an exploration of what that relationship might look like. I also think that we need to be a little bit more loving in global musicology. There's no other way of putting this, right? Love in a complex, philosophical term. Because I don't think a critical musicology, I mean, I'm all for critique. I'm a Frankfurt School person, totally Adorno-esque. But I don't think critique will just do the trick anymore, partly because critique has been commodified and it's too easy to do, but also because it will not actually build those relationships in any way. And if we want a global relationship, we begin first, I think, by curiosity, second by charity, which is love, then critique, because of course you need to use your brain, and then finally with creativity, because that way we will push the discipline somewhere and that is more exciting. So I think that's what a relational musicology should be like, if I can summarize it that way. I don't know whether that helps. It's not quite the same as Georgina Bourne or Nick Cook, but I like to talk more about these kind of lovey-dovey relationships, yeah.
Thank you so much. I think that's Sherry.
Sherry has a perplexed look on her face, so yeah.
Yeah, I could tell. I could already tell.
You can tell.
Not at all. Thanks, Daniel. It was what you were just saying, I mean, so many things, but some other time. But what you were just saying about the discipline, of course, makes me think that it's one thing to conceptualize this form of relation when we're here, or if we're thinking of ourselves as individuals and the way it is that we do our work and the way we relate to the work of others and the kinds of conversations we have in these forums. And then there's the question of our institutions. And I feel like I want to, ask you really hard questions like about the humanities and about the university and about neoliberalism and those kinds of things. But I mean, I wonder if you what you feel about the question of discipline. I mean, the question of music sub-disciplines is something that we potentially could internally resolve, but we have these external pressures.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think in my what is it called, keynote lecture without a key video, I made the point that, because we need a reality check, because really to do this we have to change everything about the way we do academia, at least in the music department, right? So we have all the wrong divisions, we have all the wrong incentives, right, to do that. And I think it depends on this question. Is global musicology just a theme? In other words, it's just something that we do. Not everybody does. Some people do it because it's a thematic thing. So if it's on a bookshelf, there'll be a section like gender studies, and there'll be, global musicology would be just another section, and people do that. That would be fine. Or is global musicology a paradigm shift, as I said, in the same way as in Einstein's theory of general relativity, where actually the whole shelf has to be relabeled global because we are all now global, so that everything now has to change, whatever kind of musicology you do. Now, if we would believe that we are all global musicologists now, then yes, the university will have to music departments will have to wake up first, right, and change things, because it's ridiculous that we have these structures that are sort of siloing our thinking, right? Why do we need to have, two binaries, right? I mean, two sides of a binary. Musicology does this, and ethnomusicology does that, right? And they're kind of fighting with each other to say which one is more righteous. But basically, they're just two sides of the same coin of modernity. So why would we have that structure? We just have to recognize that we were born that way, and we need to figure out how to undo that and to form a more what I would call a more globally minded kind of musicology. However, we have to persuade everyone that we're all global musicologists in order to do that. Yeah.
Thank you. I was wondering, that sentence you say, do nothing, I know there's a lot of fun there as well, but I'm not happy with the status quo.
Do nothing? Oh, no. Yeah. I suppose you have to read the Tao Te Ching. So do nothing is actually very hard.
No.
Yes. Actually, what it really means is not really do nothing. It means that you have to do the thing that is almost so effortless, so effortless, so efficient, that it seems as if it is nothing. Like, you could build a dam, and stop and you control the water, or you could be like water, right? So the idea here is that what is the way of being that will really help you to do what you need to do? And the first thing we need to do is do nothing, but make sure that our mindset, our ethos is correct, and begin just by being where we are. Because the global musicology doesn't require me to say, okay, I have to now, do some work about Latin America and some work now about China, then I'm a global musicologist. No, I can just be in Hong Kong and I'm part of global musicology. That's the point I'm making. So I'm not doing anything but being where I am and making sure that that being is an important part, of important participation in what I call the cloud of the hyperobject, the cloud of unknowing. So it doesn't mean it doesn't mean the status quo. It means disrupt the status quo by doing nothing.
Well, as people are shaping the questions, something to explain to you about the title that we have, Global Modernity, and is that we thought, to be honest, when we applied with the global Western art music, we got rejected. And I was worried that the word Western art music has become a taboo. And what you're showing, actually, Western art music is modernism for China, and other places. So it's just, the idea was to try to say, we are not only looking at Western art music, but we are trying to give voice to other areas. So that was the reason that Guam became Gumala. Yes, Joshua.
Thank you so much for your talk. I'm going to go back to the disciplines thing, because I think I'm caught in between that I have a master's degree in ethnomusicology. My PhD is in musicology now. The work that I'm doing, I'm caught in between having to use ethnographic methods and all of that. But more importantly is the fact that I see this in-betweenness they are talking about already existing in practice. I think it is how we theorize that practice that becomes where we begin to use polarizing language as to this is this and this is that and this is opera and this is hip hop and this is Afrobeats and things like that. At the risk of imposing a new term on an already destabilized term, what do you think of economic theories that have talked about the glocal, that is the localization of what is considered to be glocal, where it is actually from the ground up in specific contexts. And that sort of becomes like the framework to engage this disparate local indigenous material from what we consider to be a global perspective. Yeah. Global is a nice way of putting it, because in a way what I'm suggesting is that particulars, the local, by coming together, like when it's a heap kind of thing, can become global, right? But global in a way where the global knowledge itself, however, is emergent. That's the important thing. So in other words, there's no ready-made concept for the global already. So yeah, if the local can come together as a heap, one by one, then I think, yes, we will get a very different view of what musicology is. And I like the idea that it has to be emergent from the local. So it is from the ground up. But nobody gets to have a complete view of this hyper object, like the weather system, right? We're just partaking in it and trying to learn as a wanderer in that system. Yeah, that's the kind of idea of that. So yeah, I like the idea. The glocal works well in that.
Any other Morteza?
You can shout. I can repeat.
I'll necessarily repeat it.
Thank you so much for the wonderful talk. And I think my question is kind of like maybe inspired by the talk, so going somewhere else. And I think if I can use the word crisis, you found some version of crisis in the intersection of musicology and modernity, and also with those two global and globality and locality. I wonder if, especially with the whole do nothing in the Chinese way, musicology itself can be also be like a place of a crisis, especially with the fact that there's logos in it, and logos, or the whole study of music, isn't it the Western way of, looking at theology? When did theology become relevant? When theo was considered as absent, that it's not there, so let's study it, or biology and so on. So isn't musicology itself it's born out of a crisis, and the fact that music is not lived anymore, but becomes the object of knowledge.
That's too much for me to repeat.
Can you summarize that question for me?
I won't be able to say. I'm sorry.
So are you saying that the idea of the study of music comes out of a crisis, when somehow there's a kind of reflexive moment where something has happened to music, or sometimes we sort of do a double take on music itself and try to figure out what it might mean? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's an artistic research question too. Yeah, I see what you mean. I haven't really thought about this. So this is kind of the reflexive move.
You've totally messed up with our brains.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's all messed up. We are just all trying to find some kind of a sense in our heads.
Yeah. But I think the idea that you're bringing here is that somehow musicology is a kind of crisis in itself. Is that right? I feel like it was inspired by the whole. Okay, yeah. Like if we extend that danger Oh, I said I was dangerous. Yeah. We can extend that danger. It is a kind of in crisis in many ways. And what I'm trying to do is not to replace Western thought with some idea from the Tao Te Ching. It's an experiment where what would happen if you try to balance the two? Because actually there are many good things about the way the Western thought operates as well, right? And there's also self-critique within that. So can we just open our minds a little bit more and think about epistemology rather than just themes in global musicology? That's what I'm really trying to encourage. And if it's really global, then we should have global epistemologies and not just global themes. Yeah.
That sounds like, that has to be the last question because we have to wrap up and I need to go and help with the food. So can you make it a very succinct question? Thank you. Or you shout. Or catch.
Thank you so much. I'm just really intrigued by the central theme, which is the way, right? The way in Tao Te Ching usually leads to governance, right? Because doing nothing leads to an alternative form of governance. But the dominant form of governance that it complements is the Confucian way of governance, right? So I'm just wondering, is there a Confucian version of global musicology, or is the non-Confucian exactly the point?
Yeah, so this is a non-Confucian version. I gave a Confucian version last year in the Weekland lecture where I talk about music and joy. So yeah, the Confucian version is not dissimilar, but it can be easily misunderstood because Confucianism is very hierarchical and is about governance. The Tao Te Ching is also about governance, but it's a different way of thinking about governance that's a little bit more mysterious and less knowing and a little bit more chaotic in a way. And I think I prefer that for global musicology at the moment because I think we need to know less rather than know more. In the way we're operating and be a little bit more, humble in our pursuit of, our knowledge together.
But thank you so much. That's a good point to stop on. And thanks. I want to thank Daniel for coming all the way here to tell us not to do what we're doing. And thank you so much. I hope we have you again and again here.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Really, thank you.
Please around the stage. Now if you could just maybe mingle for about 10-15 minutes while I give a hand to Robin because he still thinks he's putting things on his own. And then find us at is it Neil Boyd or Boyd Neil? I never remember. For a little aperitif, and then we have the concert. And please do come to the Sound concert. He's there, and he's going to look. Whoever is not coming, he's going to chase you tomorrow. But he's also a wonderful musician, and yeah, it's very much in line because it's about love, and we talked about love.
Love.
That's it. It's spiritual and love. Thank you so much. That was amazing. That was great. Super cool.
No, I think.
Oh, you can tell this story.
How do I do this? Hang on. It's just useless technology. I'm just going to close it.
Yeah.
There we go.
Don't forget anything. And I'm going to leave you with your fans. Give a hand to
No, thank you for all the work you're doing. I really appreciate that. Crazy.
I'm just joking because I remember I was always told about, being water and all that. And I used to say, what if I don't like the shape